times, irregularities or delays in that revenue stream.
Right, so, the really good news with state funding is that 5, the general state aid, and 4 other of our categoricals, actually some of the larger categoricals, have all been rolled into the evidence-based funding. Evidence-based funding is being paid twice a month, just like the old GSA, very timely, everything. That's the great news. The bad news of that is I think then that's putting a little more pressure on the state. And so all we've seen to date is just our payment that they owed us for last fiscal year has come in. That's the only categoricals we've gotten. So, I'm anticipating it could get a little bit of a lag because they are so current on all that other funding. But it represents a pretty small number for us.
What percentage does that represent?
It's about 2% overall. And for the budgeting purposes, we only budgeted for 3 payments of categoricals from fiscal year 19. So we had planned on getting last year's and then 3 more.
So right now, that's the only suspect revenue stream.
Yes, yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Brett? If not, we have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Next action item is student activities report. I'll entertain a motion to accept the student activities report as presented in your package. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or discussions regarding the student activities report? There is a request in here for the robotics club. Anybody questions or anything about that? Okay. If not, we have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Final action item is the workman's compensation renewal.
Go ahead, Brent.
Okay, so I thought we'd take a motion first. I'm sorry.
We move it around a little bit.
All right, great, keeps me on my toes. Okay, so the district has been with the Illinois Public Risk Fund, or IPRF, for more than 12 years. And in those times, the fund has always paid out what they would call their, I guess I'm going to call it a renewal grant. They just call it a grant, but it's a renewal grant. So basically, if you have a 90-day window in which you must declare whether you're going to remain in the fund or not in the fund. That 90 days was September 30th. We got, as you can see here, we got quotes from actually 2 other carriers, but the other quote we got in was even higher. So we have 3 quotes in total. IMRF Risk Fund was by far the best renewal for us. We are experiencing a tough time right now with our workers' comp. We have one very large claim that's been difficult for us. We're doing all we can to manage it, but it was a very hard claim for the district. But that being said, you can see that our net cost, they're projecting to be $506,410, which represents $20,039 increase, or 4.12%. Would ask the board to approve this action of staying with the fund.
Now I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion or questions?
Just, why do they do it on a calendar year? I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems odd if they're doing, if they're for counties and public, that you're typically on fiscal years.
I'm forcing you to renew.
Yeah, I've never asked that question, but you're right, it would be. For us, it would be nice if they did it on a fiscal year, but they don't, it's on a calendar, so.
Any other questions? If not, call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you, Brad. On the informational items, first informational items, report on Lakeway Special Education District 843, Ron.
I was not able to attend that meeting, however, I did speak with the director after that. Two significant things happened. Over the summer, we went out for bid for a new broker for our workers' comp. Came in about $25,000, $30,000 cheaper. And then when we went out for bid and got the workers' comp back, they found we were at the wrong mod. A mod is what the average is in the industry. So if it's in transportation, if you're a secretary, if you're a teacher, there's different averages for each job that you perform, and they code them as such. So I'm not sure how our former broker had the mod wrong, but we got a refund check of $80,000, $79,645 to be exact. So that was kind of nice, about $100,000 saved by switching brokers and getting the refund check and now being in the right mod. So overall, pretty significant, thanks to our business manager and to the director. Short of that, business kind of as usual. Nothing else at this point. That concludes my report.
Any questions for Ron?
No, I have a question for Brad. Can you check our mod to make sure we're in the right one?
It's 0.97, and I'll tell you, the thing is, as long as you stay under 1, 1 is the average. If you're under 1, it's less. If you're over 1, then you're paying more than the average. So even though our mod went up a few tenths of a point, it's still below 1, so we're actually pretty good. Is that right, Doctor?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. I was just looking to see what our mod was 0.87, and because of our claims, it's 0.94. We're still, though, you know, like you said there, Mr. Lulo, anything under 1 is considered good. But you remember, back in the day, you know, we had just a tremendous amount of time when we had great ratings, and our mod was down there substantially. But we've had a tough time this last year.
Nice response. Very quick.
Next, District 210 Advisory.
Yeah, so the advisory committee is continuing its discussion regarding the semester grades, which I mentioned at the last meeting, and moving to an 80-20 formula instead of a quarters formula, which is 40-40-20. Dr. Fury came and presented a teacher survey that she sent out to all the teachers. The results of that survey are that 62% of teachers would like to move to the 80-20 system, and only 18% of them would like to stay at the quarter 40-40-20 system. We also looked at area schools, and every district in the area is currently at 80-20 except for 2, which is HF and Plainfield. However, they gave indications to Dr. Fury that they are also moving to the 80-20 formula probably this school year. We'll probably finish up the discussions. We sent out a huge packet. Actually, Dr. Fury came with a big packet of every response from all the teachers, pros and cons for this. We asked the people that are on the committee to review this, come back in November. It seems that this is a good thing. I would like to see us move forward with this in November. I think that this is beneficial for a variety of reasons, which I think after the November meeting I could talk more about. So if you have any questions about this.
What's your school?
80-20. It's basically an open semester,
Right.
so you don't stop at a certain date. There's a lot of problems with the stopping at a certain date for students, for staff, for project type-based classes. You know, my daughter is a freshman. She had 5 tests on Friday because it was the end of the quarter. You know, that's not necessarily ideal for kids. So, you know, like I said, some of the project-based classes, or even English classes with essays, sometimes it's not possible to say, hey, we're going to finish this and this essay's due. So a lot of times the quarters are unbalanced. You like to think that they're balanced, but a lot of times you have to push assessments off to the second quarter. So, yeah.
Any other questions for Beth? Thank you, Beth. Building and grounds report.
There's no report at this time. That'll be caught up in the next meeting with our utilities.
Building and grounds disappeared. FOIA requests.
FOIA report is in your backup materials for review. I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Dr. Tingley regarding the FOIA requests?
What are the master schedules?
Master schedules are just the listing of all the classes in all the buildings by course code, by classroom. So it's just for lack of a better term, a booklet from each school.
Q, 5-year music equipment replacement plan.
Brad, go ahead.
as promised in our last meeting, we've been working with the department chairs to put together a 5-year equipment rotation plan. So this plan has been put together. It's in your packet for information. It's currently included in our 5-year financial forecast. However, each year as it comes up, so for budget year 2020 would be the first time this will come up, we will go through a reevaluation administratively, working directly with the music, and come up with what the must-have for that 2020 list. That will then come back and be presented to the board as part of the budget, just kind of similar to what we're doing with Rich. You know, Rich develops a 10-year list, and then when we get down to the 1-year list, we come back and talk about it. That's what will happen with this. So this is the, you know, the big span, the big look, and then we'll bring down each year as we then prepare it for the budget for the must-haves. So,
Most of these purchased?
yes, these all be purchased. Yes.
So either Dr. Tingley or Brad, what do we do with the equipment then that's being replaced? I mean, do we sell it? Do we scrap it, throw it away, refurbish it, or do what?
Right, so we only replace equipment when it's at end of life. And so at the point when it gets to that point, then it's recycled. So it's to the point where we sell it back and then they melt it down or they always completely overhaul it or whatever.
So it would be part of a trade-in on the new?
Yeah.
Just on a go-forward basis, or when they're doing this is the music nerd in me coming out. When they're talking about instruments and replacement, can you put in there how many of these instruments there are? Like, for example, you know, bass clarinet for $7,500. Pretty stout bass clarinet.
Right.
I'm assuming that's multiple bass clarinets, so just,
Right.
when you were in the detail, it just would help just to get a ballpark as to what they're doing. I'm sure that the music directors know that. Just would help us better understand that it's not just one.
Perfect.
Other than that, I would sell them my bass clarinet for something. I do not have one. All right. Next, the fiscal year 2020 budget calendar.
All right, so I can't even believe it. I almost had a tough time typing that when I went to type it. But we're ready here to talk about fiscal year 2020 budget calendar. So, highlights on a high level, removing the March 1st meeting, whereas we'll just go ahead and have a financial update as part of the March regular meeting, since we've had so many updates on our 5 casts. The budget adoption will be same as last year. We'll be looking to do that in September. Then we also will add to the September 19th meeting, the board review of the 10-year capital. Go ahead and get that done at that same time. Then looking to move the tax levy adoption to back a month. So we'll go ahead and do that in October. And then we would go ahead and do the TAW's approval in November, and we would close on those in December. So, any questions on the proposed budget timeline?
The moving of the levy back, explain it to me why you would move it.
Well, I just think, you need to pass your levy, one, statutorily by law, by December. That's very typical to wait until December. You have more information on the new laws and all of that. From our perspective, we're not quite in the cash flow position to wait that long. But instead of having just so many items in the September meeting, we're beginning to get into the cash flow enough that, like even this year, we probably could have went ahead and held off. I mean, we're not closing on the TAWs until November. So we'll have cash flow will be fine, so we'll just, start backing that down. So I'd anticipate that every year from now out, we'll probably move back a month until we kind of get more on the cycle of approving the taxes in December after we know our new growth number.
So the urgency of the tax anticipation warrants getting pushed further and further out allows us to do that.
Exactly.
Great. I think it's fine. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the 2020 budget calendar? Community Relations Report.
Community Relations Report is in your backup materials, and I'd like to welcome Jen Hannon. Jen's here in front. She's our new Director of Community Relations. Welcome to all.
Oh,
Thank you for being here. All right. Asset of the month.
Asset of the month for November, Internet safety and usage. Young person has clear and consistent boundaries at home, set time restrictions for computer usage. At school, create strategies for open communication, constructive activities, balanced use of time. And in the community, create tip sheets for parents on effective strategies. Asset of the month for November.
All right, thank you. Next, IRS audit report.
Brad, feel free to chime in. Here is our IRS findings. We were audited by the IRS December of 2017. They did an examination of calendar year 15-16 payroll and accounts payable records. That would be upwards of 20 million each year. So included on this would be findings for back taxes who worked additional hours and were issued 1099s instead of issuing W-2s. Also included in this would be back taxes for employees who worked additional hours were paid as independent contractors through accounts payable rather than payroll, and they were issued 1099s. And then also the non-issuance of W-9s to certain vendors. And Brad, feel free to add anything to that communication.
No, you did a great job. This is the first IRS audit I've ever been involved in 26 years of school business management, and I've not heard of any others. So, but it took about 6 months to complete the audit, and findings there for your information.
So this was all non-district staff that was helping?
No, go ahead and answer that, Brad, because there was...
So my question was, is this all related to non-district staff that was working like at their summer camps?
Not all of them, correct, Brad?
No, actually, it's really broken into two categories, because you're kind of right. So the first one, and then the memo referred to as item 1, that really was for individuals that were non-staff members that had come in and just worked part-time doing summer camps. And then item 2 was district employees who maybe their full-time job was teaching, but then on a part-time, they came in to work at some summer camp or some other.
Contest in a math league, or judge a math league
Right.
competition.
So completely unrelated to their full-time job. And so they were treated, 1 and 2 employee and outside people were treated the same. That is, as independent contractors, and so they were issued 1099s.
Any other questions?
That has since been fixed.
Pardon?
I said that has since been fixed. Like,
Right,
it's no
correct.
longer part
Correct.
of the procedure.
And this was from the 15-16 fiscal year?
Calendar year, 15-16 calendar year. So 2 calendar years, and those all have been fixed.
And we've shared with our colleagues in other schools, because we couldn't find any superintendents or business managers that were aware of this. So there are others now that are making sure they're in line.
Nothing like being the tip of the sword.
Yeah.
Legislative report.
Nothing to report on this time, other than we did file for a grant for $250,000 of our capital projects through the state of Illinois, and we will have more information beginning in November, but Representative McDermott did pass along that opportunity. Brad and Rich were able to put together the request and sent back in, and it looks like there's a possibility of receiving $250,000 towards the security cameras for the capital projects.
Superintendent's report.
Nothing to report.
12, naming rights. This was brought to my attention, so I'll turn it over to, in your board packet, there was the policy. So I asked the policy be placed in there so everyone will see what it is. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Kostick at this time, and then I can conclude. So Joe, do you want to step up?
Certainly, thanks, Joe. I've been approached by some members of the community, members of the staff, about renaming the Central Auditorium after Charles Stark. Those of you who don't know, he was 40-plus year employee here at Lincoln Way, the founder of the Madrigals, very instrumental in the auditoriums, when the new auditoriums were built, the 4 facilities. So it was brought to my attention, and it obviously doesn't happen very often at Lincoln Way. So we found this board policy, and I vetted it by John Izzo to find out how we would go about doing this, if we want to go about doing this. And the first step, it's brought to the board, which we're doing right now. The second step would be to form a committee to vet the idea, after which time we would bring this back to the board for consideration and a vote. So all we're really looking at, all would be really to have happen this evening would be for a committee to be established. And then we can bring back our recommendations to the board.
So if you look at the policy states in there that the board president will appoint a special committee to consider nominations and make recommendations. So as part of that, I've reached out to Joe and to Ron to serve on that committee. So over the next 30 days, they'll come together, seek input from key stakeholders within the community, vet the process, and if they feel that it is still appropriate, we may see this as an item at our next board meeting. Are there any questions or comments regarding that, or someone else really passionate? I know, Chris, I can tell you want to be part of the committee. No? Okay, misinterpreted your body language. Okay, so that'll be the step there that we'll ask Joe and Ron to take that endeavor on over the next couple weeks. And then if they feel their process is worthy, they'll bring it back to us at a later meeting. I'm assuming probably November, correct?
Sounds good.
Is that the process?
That would be the plan as of right now, yes.
All right, very good. Any other district business? Any board members have anything? If not, any correspondence?
Yes, included in your executive content is the IASB resolution number 2, Army teachers, that was discussed in public comment this evening. Should be down executive content under correspondence. And the Army teachers fact sheet.
If you open
So-
a second,
Yeah, so that is there for your review and, for discussion for the delegation prior to the November conference.
You guys hear?
Can you just explain what's happening?
Well,
I'm not aware.
here, I don't know if this will create or gain any traction or momentum or not. There's been discussion of concealed and carry in the classrooms during the day in the state of Illinois, and whether or not the state board would support such an issue. I do know of a superintendent in the state of Illinois that is conceal and carry every day in the buildings. Regardless of what resolution would happen, it would have to go under local control, so it would go to this body for a discussion anyway. So at this point, I believe it's just a discussion, but it will be discussed in November at the annual conference. And Chris, I don't know where I do know that at the IASA level, it was opposed. Didn't feel it was a good idea.
So you'll obviously we'll get updates.
Correct, and that will be part of the board convention in November. That will be a discussion, and we'll, as I said, I anticipate anything still being local control.
Can Naperville just do something like that?
Voted no.
Christine's at public, right?
She has done yes.
No, I just want to make sure she was on.
I'm sure she will. Okay. Correspondence. Now, I entertain a motion to go into closed session. Items to be discussed will be established sale or lease price of real estate, student disciplinary cases, and litigation. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We do not anticipate any action.
Correct.
No action when we return. Thank you.
We need our computers.
I don't think we do. No.